is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story. You're listening to Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting in danger. Where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio. Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for diligence, confidence enough to assess dispositions. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other world. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio. Hello and welcome, everybody. It's awesome to be here with you, and I'm joined by my good friend Brett Lee Thomas. We're going to be continuing the ongoing series of Mystery Babylon that we've been doing for several months and years now. And it's always a good time and a great pleasure to join all of you in the listening audience, and we really appreciate all of you, supporting our ministry and our work. And I'm learning more about this streaming stuff, and I was able to actually get the show started on time. So how about that? Brett, how are you doing, brother?
All right. I'm doing great, brother. How about yourself? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine. And
Oh, man.
my
You're doing it.
yeah, it's good to kind of be back in the in the driver's seat and doing shows again. My voice is still, it runs out, so I'm glad to have you as a guest, and I'll try to, stay as loud as I can, and I'll do what I can to, as far as supporting your message and asking questions. But certainly if you have anything you'd like to share and comment or to bring forth as question to Brett, he is connected to the chat. And for those that would like to join us, you can find us at the Zen Garcia YouTube live stream and join in on the chats and gather with all of our great family of listeners. It's awesome, to be connected and to share this time and space with so many what I consider to be very wise and awakened beings. And thank you, Sherry and Tammy, for your ongoing support and moderating all of the content. We certainly couldn't do it without you. But how have you been, brother, and what are you up to?
Well, I've been pretty good. Hey, just Zen, just to notify you, remember that time where they could barely hear me? I think they're not hearing me again.
Oh,
So I've got an
great.
issue. Remember what we did last time to set that up? My volume?
Let me see.
Testing.
Well, the things on the OBS setup are as loud as I can get them.
Okay. Can anybody hear me? Yeah, that happened last time.
I wish that's strange because
Yeah. Can anybody hear me?
hmm,
Anybody hear me? Hello? Still low, but okay. I'll have to talk really loud then. Can you hear me now if I speak up? How about if I speak up a little bit? Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, the settings here are all the way.
Okay. I hope it works. Okay, they can hear you, but it's not very loud. So, oh man. Yeah. You wanna? Is there a way to reboot, or you wanna just try to keep going, Zen, or what?
I don't really know of a way to reboot.
Okay. 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 Let's see here.
I'm checking the settings,
Okay.
but I don't really know about this stuff. I don't know what Justin does to make you louder.
And a mic anywhere? Like a mic? Volume? Mic volume?
Yeah, I already turned it up as loud as it can go.
Oh, it is. Okay. Okay. Okay.
You might have to just yell.
Okay. Just a second here. I'll have to talk loud. Okay.
I hear you just fine though.
You hear me fine?
It's odd, yeah.
Yeah. That happened that other time. So, oh, darn it. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. Okay. I'll talk a little louder. Hope everybody can hear me now. Okay. Here we go. So yeah, I'm doing okay. And, just get excited about tonight. And I'm so happy to have you back. It seems like old times, doesn't it? It's so nice to have you back on board and just leading the way. It's really nice. I'm excited.
Yeah, I apologize everybody for the technical difficulties. I am not well versed in this aspect of it. And Justin is going to be in Korea for a month.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's okay. I'll just have to talk really loud, so that's fine. You want me to?
Technical difficulties, I am not.
The best I can. How about now? Can anybody hear me any better? You hear me this?
That's so odd.
Yeah.
Is it for everybody that Brett is low?
Yes.
Does anybody hear him fine?
Everybody's saying the same thing.
That's a
Very low.
bummer.
Anybody? Okay. We'll make it work. Let me just see if I can turn up my mic. I don't know if I can turn up my mic. So just a second here. All right. Let's see here. I'm sorry, everybody. We'll get it worked out one way or another. Settings. Okay. Anybody hear me any better? Anything? Any better? I turned up my mic as far as high as it can go. Okay.
No one in the chat can hear Brett very well. Yeah, Brick says maybe we should hang up and reconnect. So let's try that.
Give me a call back. All right, we'll be right back. Okay, we'll be right back.
All right, go ahead and hang up, brother. And I'll hit you back up. All right. I'll check these settings here too, just to make sure. It's so many settings on so many platforms.
What if there was something better?
Okay, I hope that helps out. I'm going to bring him on. Well, I hope all of you are having a blessed day, and we're getting ready for a hurricane that's about to come through Georgia. It's slamming up through southern Florida, and we're supposed to get 7 to 9 inches of rain, which we've needed, but hopefully it won't knock the power out. At least it shows tonight. Okay, there's Brett. Oh, let's try this again. Pray everything is good. Well, any time now, brother. Maybe he started over. Okay, I'm gonna. Bear with me, please. At least my voice is loud. Okay, we're gonna. I don't know why you didn't call him, but I tried to remove him. We're gonna re-add him to the call. And we'll pray this works and that you can hear us, he can hear me, and we can get all this rolling. But just to give you an update, everybody, I've been working very diligently on my new book, which is going to be called Lost Paradise. And it's a poetry book that covers a lot of the awakening that has happened to me since 2014 to now. And so I've been writing a lot of poems and have placed them in order in timeline and the way that they happened over the course of the many years. And it spans from 2014 to 2019, and of course I've added some newer poems from the last few years, and even am adding work from my recent hospitalization and stay there. I don't know why Brett hasn't rejoined us. I sent him an invitation. Maybe he's restarting his setup. But anyways, I wanted to do something different. I have written a lot of books just on commentary and what I, think the decryption of the Book of Enoch and other type books. There's Brett. Can you hear us, brother?
Can anybody hear me? Can anybody hear me?
I hear you. They're on a delay, so just keep talking and
okay.
hopefully.
I'm here. Can anybody hear me? Anybody hear me?
let's pray that that everything is resolved.
Anyone hear me?
They'll give a shout out once they catch up. They're just a few minutes behind.
Okay. Oh, Rick says he can hear you. All right, good.
Yay!
It's working.
All right, praise God. All right, oh good.
Okay, now is Zen really loud? Zen's the okay, good. Everybody can hear me. Well, you did something good. Good job.
Okay, great. I don't know what happened or what I did, but praise God.
That's okay. We
Yeah.
got it.
All gratitude to the Most High. Yeah.
Okay, yes. For sure.
All right, wonderful. Well, before we start and move forward, why don't you give people your website contacts where they can go to find and support your work, and then let's get this show started.
Okay, you're a little grainy. Are you okay? Or is Zen okay? Everybody, can you hear Zen all right? If you can hear, I can deal with it.
My voice is a little not
Yeah, the volume
strong.
is a little loud. Okay, that's okay. Okay, so we'll continue. They'll let us know if there's something going on. But yeah, I have actually I'm working on my 6th book and the series, and I have 3 volumes. Okay, and they are all actually I'm getting the newest one available on your website very soon. Actually, just about a week or so. I'm gonna when they get back from overseas. The first one is called The Way of Cain. The second volume is called Tower of Babel, and the third is called Seeds of the Serpent. They all kind of go together. They all talk about the whole concept of what Mystery Babylon might be in the book of Revelation. The Bible gives it a name, but there's just so much more to it, and I believe it actually started all the way back around the time of the garden and the characters in the garden. And people still cannot hear me. Anyone? Can they hear me? Are you still there, Zen?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. All right. Did you turn it down a little
Yeah, I turned mine down a little bit.
Huh?
I turned my audio down a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Can anybody hear me still? Very faint. Okay. All right. Well, should we keep on, or do you want to just we'll keep on with the voices, or as long as people.
I don't really know what to do. Yeah, I mean we'll have to just
Okay.
try to manage.
I'll do the best I can. Okay. What I do.
Are you using a plug-in mic
Yes.
or a headset?
Yeah. That happened the last time. Remember when you and I were doing it solo?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why, because whenever I do any shows with anybody else, it seems to be okay.
That's weird.
But yeah.
You may want to make yourself a little bit more grainy, and then because it'll boost me.
Oh, turn up the mic again.
Yeah.
Okay, since you're gonna be doing the talking, I'll just move the mic a little further away from me too. All right, hold on one second. All right.
All right. How about now? Does everybody hear me now? Anyone?
Remember, there's a delay, so they're a few minutes behind.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyone now? Can anyone hear me now? Everyone? Anyone hear me now?
Just continue and then we'll chat.
Okay. Okay.
You were talking about your latest book.
Okay. Can anyone hear me? Anyone hear me? They said they can hear me a little better, so that's good. So we might as well just keep it like that. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so I'll do most of the talking, I guess, so that way we will keep it to a minimum of distortion or anything. Okay. What we did last week is we began my 2nd volume which is called the Tower of Babel. Okay, that is a little bit of a deeper look into the elements of what actually the parallel between the times of Noah and the times of today back then. As I was saying before, in the previous one we've been talking about, which is called the Way of Cain, I decided to go a little bit deeper and look at more sources out there that could actually give us some answers, because there is truly one story of what happened back then after the Tower of Babel and after the Garden of Eden and all that would happen in the days of Noah. There is one story, but again, it gets a little bit diluted, and that's what I'm trying to clear up. So all we have now, we don't have a lot of physical evidence, but we do have ancient accounts. Of course, we have the Bible and such, but that's basically all we have is the written word now. So that's what I tried to do in all three of these volumes, is to give us answers just by finding everything I can collect, putting it together, and making one story out of it all. Okay? Still there, Zen?
Yeah, I'm not going to say much. I'm just going to let you do it. So don't ask me to comment or reply. Just keep it going, brother.
Feel free to jump in, brother.
Yeah.
I like it when you come. Okay. The first hour here, we're going to get a little bit more into the Tower of Babel and starting. And the second will be into more of the third book that I have just been working on and finished part one. And the reason why I'm splitting it up a little bit is because I feel that we need to have more of that out there, the information from that third volume, because that was the hardest one I need, and that I think has the most relevant information that we need. So that's why I'm splitting it up, and I'm working on that one and talking about it in the next hour. So in this first hour, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Tower of Babel and the beginnings, another look at these beginnings, okay? The Garden of Eden and what happened. And Zen and I both have looked into it about pre-Adamites and how the Garden of Adam might have been, or the Garden of Eden might have been a little bit different of a world that what we've noticed in the Bible and we've thought, okay? We might have had terrestrial angels walking around, actually, okay? Called the Nephilim, okay? The ones that were actually under Adam because God made him the viceroy of the garden. And when they helped with the serpent, helped to disrupt everything, and the fall occurred, now we have a bunch of these terrestrial angels running around the world at the time and siring children from the human women, etc. And that's where we get the concept of giants, and that's when we get a lot of pollution in the bloodlines of humanity. So, science has told us about the beginnings of civilization. They talked around the area of Babylonia, and they call it Mesopotamia. You've got Sumeria. You've got all these different areas. But again, we don't have science exactly meshing with the Bible, but we do in a lot of ways. So there's reasons for that, obviously, which we'll find out later. But that doesn't mean that we both can't get a story from both science and archaeology and the Bible. And I believe in that area of Babylonia is actually where everything started. Your thoughts on that, Zen? Do you believe that it basically, the Garden of Eden, etc., is in that same area?
I believe that the garden was in the north, and that the cradle of humanity is where the Mount of the Congregation is.
Okay, the north of that area with the Tigris and Euphrates?
The North Pole.
Oh, the North Pole. Okay, I get you. Okay. Yeah, I totally understand that concept too. Absolutely. They talk about the north. Okay. Anyhow, but my thought, again, just through the thoughts is maybe, there could be something possibility to that being out in between the Tigris and Euphrates River as where we hear the Bible say such a thing. Now, after the fall, we really didn't have an organized system or cosmos as we did in the garden, obviously, because the fall just unleashed sin into the world and people were going in all different directions after, because they really didn't have the whole setup as they did before. You had people arising, and science would call them Sumerians and Akkadians. And the reason why I want to get into some of this is because I believe that the Bible could actually have, in that story, the pre-fall and the post-fall story, it could actually jive with what we hear about a lot in archaeology and science, and especially into the pagan realm where we have pagan mythology. And the reason why I talk about those things as being congruent and actually having the same essential elements at the beginning is because we know what the Bible says, most of us, but we don't really know a lot about what paganism and what they write and what they say. For example, okay, the thing that we do know, though, is we're starting to see that there are some parallels and some things actually coming to light. Like we hear of the Akkadians, that was supposed to be another group that was back in the times of Mesopotamia. But we also understand that Akkad, the name, is also related to the serpent, or a serpent himself. And it's just strange that we wonder why, okay, now we have the Akkadians, and the name Akkad is related to a serpent. So now what do we have? Serpent people? So it just strikes me interesting that we do have a people back then recognized by science that we call the Akkadians, and we do have actually a serpent in the Garden of Eden too. There is one of my ancient sources, not ancient, but one of my sources that I looked at basically talks about actually getting one of these seals from ancient times that were found, and I'm going to read what they said they found on it. One of the most amazing finds uncovered in Akkad was that of a seal, which possibly shows that the Akkadians knew of the story of the temptation of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. George Smith of the British Museum, who lived during the middle 1800s, wrote, quote, "One striking and important specimen of early type in the British Museum has two figures sitting one on each side of a tree, holding out their hands to the fruit, while at the back of one, the woman is stretched the serpent." So again, we have these similarities and these pictographs that actually seem to show the exact same story that we have in the Garden of Eden. So could these new Sumerians and Akkadians and etc. and being formed at this time after the fall, could these be actually just those displaced pre-Adamites and groups that just decided to go their own way or begin to form groups? Your thoughts on that, Zen?
With regard to the story of that stela, it reminds me of a manuscript called The Apocalypse of Abraham. And in that manuscript it describes the serpent as the winged snake, the guardian of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And it describes him as a dragon with wings, that he was a seraphic angel. And what is also interesting is that in that area, that region that you're talking about, because I think that the stories that we have now with regard to the Sumerians and even the Thracians, that these are post-flood, that after the flood of Noah, but that there was a first world age that existed previously, and this was the time of Atlantis and the stories of Mu and a mother culture and that was ruled over by the Atlantean priest kings, and that they were trying to enslave the pre-Adamites. And that's why I say that there was once a time when initially Adam and Eve, they were brought down through what is called the ladder of heaven, which is where Jacob had his vision of the ladder ascending to the heights of heaven and descending down to the bottomless pit, and that is in the area of the north. That's where In Isaiah 14, it speaks about hallowed Lucifer wanting to ascend to the heavens above the stars and the clouds of God to establish his seat above the mount of the congregation in these sides of the north. One of the books that I wrote on biblical cosmology, the third in that trilogy, is called Paradise, the sides of the north and the mount of the congregation. And it shows how when Adam and Eve were initially removed from paradise, they were banished to what was the mount of the congregation. They lived in that lower part. And that's also where we have these stories of, when the angels were cast out, where it says that he wanted to, establish his seat in the north. He was cast down to the sides of the pit. And the sides of the pit, the bottomless pit, is in the north. But of course, it speaks of how Adam and Eve were removed to the east, and that they were then established in Mount Moriah. And so I do believe that culture came down to the north initially and then spread to the east towards the Mesopotamian region and towards what is where Israel is now.
Do you think? Okay, so you could just give me a yes or no answer if the voice is kind of going. But so do you think it was right after? Just curious. Do you think it was like right after the fall that God relocated them to the Mesopotamian region, or was it sometime where they had to migrate?
Well, they migrated after. I think it talks about in the story too, in the Vitae, the life of Adam and Eve, when Eve wandered towards the west, towards the sun, and Adam had to go and find her. But that they were relocated, and it could have been that there were climate changes, or I'm not sure, but they did wander from the north towards the east, and they settled in what is now the Holy Land.
Okay.
But anyways, don't have me comment too much. Just have this like your own show, and bring forward the information, because the volume is distorted. We're not the same.
Okay. All right. I just want to get your thoughts on it. Okay. Okay. As we continue, the essentials of what I get into in this first chapter of the Tower of Babel is trying to link how paganism and Christianity, or anything following God, whatever you call it, at the beginning, the Bible it has a similar origin. It's not like I was talking about the characters, people who formed, and the stories. I'm not talking about the theology. But we do hear from sources, like I have a source in my book saying Egypt, Chaldea, India, Greece, and Rome passed the torch of civilization from one to another. They drew from a fountain higher than themselves. So I believe that also, because that's why we do see the equivalence of ancient mythologies of, let's say, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. We see that they all have their equivalents. And the question is, why do they have the same gods, just with different names? So where did they come from, possibly? Did they come just neutral, or would they just come out of the woodwork, or could there be a common origin between them and the stories of the Bible? And I believe that latter is the case. Traditions die hard, habits die hard. So when you're trying to push something, especially a religion, how I believe that Cain and the serpent were actually trying to establish way back, they needed to keep stories alive, and they needed to keep especially ancestors as something holy, because if you weren't going to worship God, you might as well worship man. And I believe that that's how paganism got started. I believe that the same figures in these stories that we hear of, we'll hear of eventually Greek mythology, you'll hear of Zeus, etc. They do come from ultimately the Garden of Eden and the characters, as we'll find more and more. That's what this first chapter is all about. Once we realize that, we'll start to get an understanding that it's either, in my opinion, it's either one way or another. In other words, when you go theologically, you're either heading or about to head one way or another, towards God or towards elements of the other side. And when I mean the other side, I mean the fallen world, the demonic world, etc., Satan, everything that has to do with this fallen world. I believe it's either one or the other. I don't believe there's actual neutral spirits, neutral this, neutral that, because of what I'm saying. I believe that pagan religion actually came from the Garden of Eden, as we'll see. But once we start to realize that it's all the same, they all come from that source, then it'll help us to solidify our understanding that no, there's not really anything neutral out there trying to sway us one way or another. There's no neutral river god that somebody can worship that's just out there that, that'll help people, etc. It's leading you in a certain way. And most likely, if you're looking for multi-gods, it's away from God. That's part of the mystery of Mystery Babylon itself. It is a true mystery, okay? You have what's pretty clear in the Bible. You have people's names, who they are, what stories they bring. But in these mythological stories and paganism, you things are shrouded, things are layers upon layers, and it's like an artichoke, okay? It's like you have to peel off one seemingly neutral or one layer to get to another deeper layer to get more understanding. And again, it's like the frog that gets boiled in that water. If you're sitting in a pot of water and you keep peeling off these levels of artichoke and you don't know that you're getting boiled, that's how people get seduced and sucked into this whole Mystery Babylon and false religion.
Hey, Brett.
That's how the go ahead.
I was going to suggest, why don't you read some of your books, some of your manuscripts, so that the people that are not familiar with your work, they can hear some of the things that you've written. And
This is.
I was just saying that they say that the levels are not too bad, so I'll be able to comment and.
Good.
But yeah, I think you should do that as well, because there may be a lot of people that haven't read your material, and I think that it might entice them and encourage them to check out your massive volumes of really incredible study.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, no.
This first chapter though does not have a lot of different quotes in it, because it's more of just establishing a commonality between the two. And I am reading out of some parts of it, but I don't have a lot of quotes. Okay, I get just more of I'm just kind of reading the best I can. So I will definitely get more quotes.
Well, it doesn't have to be the first chapter. Wherever you think is, something that could support what you're talking about, what you're commenting on, and anything that might be an interesting, tidbit of information.
Okay. So again, what I'm getting back into is I believe that when we do hear these ancient mythologies and mythological stories, which I touch upon, that they're not actually, necessarily evil in just what the storyline is, because again, when I do research, I try to research everything, okay? Everything out there, and then we have to use discernment to find out, okay, which direction are we leading? For an example, as what you were talking about, Zen, remember that Robert Bowie Johnson, that one that wrote the Parthenon Code, that book we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah. He says, actually, in a quote, Judeo-Christian tradition says that God is the measure of all things, and the ancient Greek religion stated that man is the measure of all things. And to take that in, it's just wonder. It makes us wonder. Okay, well, again, we talk about man being a created being. But when we do look at these mythological people, we do see that they actually appear as men so often, or as women, men, women. So as humans, why? Why would they be that way unless maybe they did start out as people of the post-fall world? So again, I think a lot of this does come back to the post-fall world, and that's why we have a lot of smoke and mirrors, because they don't want you to understand that a lot of these stories, that these great fanciful stories that they talk about are congruent with the Bible and these same characters like Cain and the serpent. They'll talk about serpent, but they won't talk about, who he actually is. Is he's the same serpent as in the Bible?
I think that one of the most difficult things for people to realize in studying religion and mythology and the scriptures is that there is this division that you and I and Dr. Joy talk about, and that is the enmity between what are the bloodlines, that there is a physical progeny, a people, a group that is connected to the devil. They are, ye are of your father, the devil. There is this brood of vipers, and this is a truth that has been largely hidden and still maintained in secrecy. And the elite, they keep this as, part of what they hoard because they believe themselves to be the light bearers and the ones that are the chosen people, that we're the useless eaters and they are the chosen race and the chosen people, and they have this secret knowledge, the mystery school of knowledge that is hoarded and passed down. And the thing that most don't really understand is that this group does worship the serpent, the dragon, the light bearer, Prometheus, the fallen one, the eye of Horus. He is the, Sataniel, the adversary of God and man. This particular Azazel, this particular fallen angel, was a rebel, an insurgent, and he was able to have a third of the angels join him in the rebellion, and for that they were cast out. They were placed here on the earth before we were, and they are the ones that created predominantly what we see of the large, massive cyclopean architecture that is found all over the world, and that is unexplainable, and that we cannot replicate in this day and age with regard to humanity and the technology that we have. And that was also because at that time and in the past, they were of very much larger stature. There were giants on the earth in those days, before and after the flood, and the scriptures tell us. And so if you have a background in the scriptures and you study prophecy, these things will become apparent. The Holy Spirit will lead and guide you and give you the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and a mind to understand. But most of the other world, they're caught up in the strong delusion, and they have no idea how to make sense of what they see and what are the mysteries, the mysteries of the earth, the mysteries of the ancient past, and they're being pushed to accept the ancient aliens, which are nothing more than the fallen angels, as their gods. And in ancient times, many cultures and civilizations did worship these ancient beings. And that's the distinction. That's where most people get lost. Because you see in all these ancient, cultures and peoples that were not connected to Elohim, not the children of Adam, they worshiped the serpent, the feathered serpent, going back to ancient times. And they also worshipped a pantheon of multiple gods and goddesses. And these are the fallen angels. And that's the hard part to understand about the underlying truth that connects all things. That's why people should study the Bible, and I think read the book of Enoch, because it will bring clarity in a way that, not a lot of books can.
I think you're absolutely right, and I totally, that's why I think the Bible has the mystery and Mystery Babylon, because there's so many mysteries, and a lot of that I talk about right now or tonight or in the books is trying to look at it from today's perspective too, is why they downplay even the thought of giants or anything like that, is because, as you were saying, Zen, I think they're trying to hide that that their bloodlines, which they consider special, is nothing but this fallen bloodline of the Nephilim over time. So I totally think you're right, and I totally think that so much of it is obscured, and you wonder how can you have, the serpent worship and the feathered serpent in Mexico in the middle of America, and then you have it across the pond.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense that you have it everywhere, as you were saying, in the world, unless it did have a central origin.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, with the distinction and the separation of these two ways of worship, those that worship the fallen angels, you will find connected to that worship, to that kind of reverence, the demand for blood sacrifice, for often victim or child sacrifice. And there's a ritual of blood involved in those religions. And that's why people don't and can't make sense of, like all these ancient sites that are adorned and connected to the worship of the feathered serpent. They were also the ones that, did like the Aztecs in cutting the still beating hearts out of people. Moloch and the demand for blood in ancient times mentioned within the Bible and in scriptures. This is the mystery. Those ancient pagan religions, those ancient gods, they're not benevolent. They're wicked. And that's what people can't make sense of. Because, they want to be proud of their ancient past and the ancient religions that are still dominant in their cultures and societies. But what they don't understand is that the fallen angels and these pantheon of gods and goddesses, these demigods, the fallen angels, they were wicked, and they were involved in many things that led astray humanity. The book of Enoch tells us that they were the ones that helped Cain and his line to become artificers and to create not only alcohol and the use of drugs and brothels and things like that, taverns, weights and measures. They built cities, and they also demanded blood sacrifice in worshiping these fallen gods. And so once you understand that, then when you look at all the different cultures and civilizations worldwide that worship a pantheon of multiple gods and goddesses, even the Greeks, the Romans, the Sumerians, the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, they are the fallen ones. And so when you read and study the Bible, and it tells us about, Michael fighting the dragon, and that the dragon drug 1/3 of the angels of the Most High down to the earth with him, and they became legion, the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness and wickedness in high places. It helps one to make sense of what's really going on and what we are contending with even in this time, in this day and age.
Yeah, absolutely. It is so obscured now, though, because in this age of science that we've had for the last 300 or 400 years, anything that talks about anything that's possibly spiritual has already got two strikes against it. So we're fighting an uphill battle with the believability of people out there just by even talking about these things, and that's all my plan, in my opinion. And it's interesting. I believe that today, again, we hear people always saying, oh, a lot of them are saying, oh, religions are all the same, it's just a different pathway to the same God, And I hear that when I do in my studies and my travels, and I believe that's close, it's correct, but it's almost.
No, that's actually a true lie. There's not
Right.
all the religions are not the same. They don't worship the same gods. There's two different peoples and two different bloodlines, and that factors into all the knowledge of all the various religions. There's only one true way. That is Christ. He is the holder, the bearer, the determiner of salvation. If you worship the fallen angels, you're going to be cast out. You are spewed out as if you don't exist. And in that day, there will be many that cry to Christ and say, Lord, Lord, I did all these things. And he will say, I never knew you, you workers of iniquity. And so, no, there is very much difference between the religions. Because, the pagan Gentile nations, they worship the fallen angels. And the seed of Abraham, the children of Adam, they worshipped Elohim. And Elohim is the true pre-existent triune Godhead that established everything. It says in the scriptures that it was by the word and through wisdom that all things were established. The foundations of the earth, the heavens, paradise, all things, even humanity, we were made in their image. Male and female created he them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's why I'm saying that, that's their attempt to cover up that there is truly two ways. It's not just
Right.
one way, but it's almost been absorbed. Like I said, that's what their attempt is, to absorb everything into one pagan core, an outer shell. That's what they're trying to do.
That's the one world order. The one world order, the one world religion, one world economic system. They're trying to establish this globalist movement and identity. Everything, merged together through the United Nations and Mystery Babylon, the Catholic Church, accepting and inviting all the pagan religions in to, under a collective. That's the amalgamation, but they are the fallen church, and they are the false church. And that's why we should never bend the knee or join in those kind of things. We are set apart, and so we have to remember that to stand with and side with truth, not deception.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because and something that I'm going to get into later on, but you probably know the Pantheon in Rome, and that's when basically right after the age of Christianity was born, we had Rome staying there building this magnificent building, which I was actually in when I visited Rome, and what they wanted to do there, they wanted to unite all religions together, and everybody can bring their a statue or an idol of their own god in there and worship, and that was their idea of bringing together everybody in religions. And it's fascinating that they tried it way back then, even right after the time of Jesus.
Do you know that St. Peter's Basilica is in the shape of a serpent?
I heard something of that line. That's pretty.
Oh yeah, you should for sure check it out. It is, and basilica, it comes from the word basilisk, which basilisk is also a feathered serpent, a dragon. And so there's connections to all of that as well. They show, because they worship in a building that is in the shape of a serpent, and underneath they have in the hidden part where only the bishops and the clergy can go, they have an upside down cross, and they openly worship Lucifer. Malachi Martin brought all of this information out, and it's not anything that isn't known. If you look at with an open mind and examine this, you'll find that the Catholic Church is part of Mystery Babylon, the religious arm of Mystery Babylon.
Well, it's old habits die hard, and if you were once a pagan empire back then in Rome, you're not going to want to have to just do a total convert. That's kind of the thing about Antichrist. When you say Antichrist, again, I'll be expressing this later, and again, another meaning is, and I want to keep saying this because it's very important, is it's not just evil. It's acting like you're Christ, acting like you're someone good, and you're someone wholesome and compassionate, but not quite the same as the God of the Bible and what the Bible has said. It's close. So that's why you get anti. It's close, near to, but have some differences.
Instead of, it's instead of Christ as well.
Mm-hmm. Also, absolutely. Instead of Christ. In other words, insert our own way of thinking, our own humanist agenda, our own secularism inside of something that sounds really good and sounds Christ-like, and love thy neighbor, etc. So yeah, I believe totally what you're saying.
Yeah, we are just a few seconds from break, but just a real quick commentary. Ideally, if the United Nations wasn't the agenda of the New World Order, and it wasn't to be an extended arm of the ruling elite, it might be a good thing, but we know it's not. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. Top of the hour.
We're right back.
We'll be right back after this message. We will not comply with the institutions, sick illusion, or we won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution. We will not comply with the institutions, sick illusion, or we won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution. They're trying to dumb us down. Don't want us to make us out. We gotta get out of now, 'cause it's a revolution. Revolution.radio, freedomslips.com. Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenn Perspective with our great host, Lori and Fenn. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenn Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here. We're already here. We're already here.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly,
tried and we've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. The time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence. At the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Tonight is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening. While we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to the host.
All right, welcome back everybody for second hour. Do you hear the distortion?
Yeah, I hear a little bit of reverb.
Yeah, we should be good now.
I don't hear it now.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna turn it back over to you, brother.
Okay, can everybody hear me on this? Yeah, okay. Okay, you know, I as we were speaking before, I'm just going to continue on with what we were talking about before, because I think it's important right now. But again, Satan is the big mimicker, and all of that from the other side. One way they get successes is mimicking and imitating. And that's what we talk about. When you talked about blood sacrifice, you know, of course, it was a requirement for Cain and Abel, and since then, but now that's why we have back in the Aztecs and etc. making blood sacrifice another requirement, because they like to mimic. And the more you mimic, the more smoke and mirrors you can create. Now again, I believe that the Bible and that route is one of a kind, but that's why it's continually being infiltrated over time. We did talk about Cain and of course the route that he started taking. It wasn't just being a nomadic people and living in tents. He started building cities and etc. So his way of civilization was another route, but again, it appeared to be good and appeared to be something wholesome and nice to people. They had protection, they had all these things. But it doesn't mean that just because you have things a certain way, it doesn't mean that it's godly. Another thing that we're going to find is over time, when these pagan religions become more pronounced and they start to slither into even Christian views and thoughts, they will eventually, in my opinion, lead you towards something that's the opposite of what you might have originally thought it composed, okay? Because it's almost like they cannot help but turn you towards the other side. That's just how it is, okay? You know, you say, okay, if they add a little bit, it'll be okay. Well, let's believe something that fallen man thinks is right instead of what it says that God thinks is right. And that's one way we can do when we spot some of these things, and we'll be continuing on with them, but we'll spot that they will be taking you in an opposite direction slowly. We'll give you an example, like in the story of the Garden of Eden, okay? You look at some of these pagan religions that talk about the serpent, and even like the typical Greek account talking about the serpent. The Greeks, as we talked before with Robert Bowie Johnson and how they would inscribe a lot of portraits on their vases and on their buildings like the Parthenon, etc. They told the story of the Garden of Eden and the characters. You could just tell because they had their own names, but the stories were a lot alike, and they had a serpent in there. And they headed towards the opposite of what we hear about in the Bible and God. And they basically were not out there saying that the serpent helped cause the fall and helped seduce Adam and Eve, etc. But it was just the opposite. He actually enlightened them. He brought them to something, to freedom, Okay, you hear these opposite things. In other words, it's now the serpent is supposed to be the good guy, and God is the condescending bad guy that's always trying to keep people down, and etc. So that's where you start to get these opposite end results. And another quote that I found, it says, an early group of Gnostics actually attributed all wisdom to the serpent of paradise and say that he was the author of the knowledge of men. Okay, the wisdom of the serpent. Again, we see it in pagan religions all over, and we know they may not exactly link that to the garden and the Bible, but they talk about a serpent as if he's just very smart and they have a lot of wisdom. But we know, if you think about and look at serpents today slithering on the ground, they're not that intelligent. They got to be something more. If we think that Robert Bowie Johnson again gives us another quote. He says, though on one hand Greek idol worship contradicts the teaching of the Word of God, but yet, on the other hand, if properly understood, it reinforces the truth of the Scriptures. And I believe that's very true. And that's why I do study even mythology and etc. And I try to figure out who these mythological characters are. Because again, typical today, we have a lot of let's say our educated Christian elite just saying, no, just concentrate on the Bible. Just think about the Bible. Focus towards God and only. I totally agree with that, but we need to understand the enemy. Like I said, I mentioned the last time, if we're playing a football game, the coach understands each player on the other team and what they're capable of. And I think that's what we need. That's why I study these other mythological accounts, because not only do you get a little bit of understanding of possibility what they could equate to in the early biblical stories, you start to understand that it's truly one way or another, and you understand that one is just a corruption of the other because they both come from the same source.
Well, the other interesting and important aspect of studying the extra biblical material is because, in my opinion, there are more than just 66 books that were inspired by the Most High, and that those that established the canonical, the Council of Nicaea, they were the bishops of the Roman Catholic Church, and I believe that there was a portion of them that had the agenda to hide truth and to keep it from the masses. And that's why most of the authorized texts from back then were removed, hidden, and hoarded. You see that the Vatican Library has much more than just the 66 books that they authorized for the study of the masses.
Yeah, they probably found a lot of books and they hid it under the archives, right? At the Vatican. There's a lot of books that are
without a doubt,
that nobody has seen or is supposed to see, which kind of lets us raise an eyebrow too.
Yeah, exactly.
And I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you what you said about the Council of Nicaea, because it is around the 4th century that we find the beliefs in terrestrial fallen angels and giants, etc., starting to wane big time. And of course, there could be a reason for that. It doesn't seem like by chance that the Bible becomes what it is under the guise of the Rome, and then all of a sudden we have belief in these fallen angels, these terrestrial angels, these giants starting to go down to nothing, like they're fairy tales. Is because I believe that bloodlines were in slowly keep it command here, and if you're going to convert into any kind of Christian religion or Christian belief, you're going to have to silence that, because if you are still pagan, you have to kind of silence that you have blood of that element, and you have to seduce and slow down the possibility of people even thinking that there might even be bloodlines of these giants still around. You agree with that?
Oh yeah, they're trying to hide any knowledge and any connection to the giants and that they existed, when it's clear and evident I mean, not only from skeletons being found of the giants, especially here in America, once the pioneers and the pilgrims arrived and started farming, and they encountered massive mounds, earthen mounds that contain the bones, the armor of giants. Even the story of Brewer's Cave in Utah, there was said to be found a couple, a man and a woman, that were giants, and they were of royalty. So, yeah, even Abraham Lincoln mentions the giants in his speech when he was speaking about Niagara Falls and being a witness to it. So, yeah, the Smithsonian is part of the cover-up, and all of the ancient, the governments of the world, they are still in collaboration to hide not only giants and their existence, but and the fallen angels, and that they are the Anunnaki, but they are also hiding the truth of biblical cosmology from the masses, and most people still have no idea as to why, when they go to the beach on vacation and they look out over the oceans, that it is a horizontal, flat all the way to the horizon.
As I was saying, I believe it's only one way or another. It's either one side or the other. So that is why they are today, and they have been for, like you said, with Smithsonian for a while, trying to just cover up and just kind of get rid of the possibility of something that might support the Bible, like these giants living in America or even in Sardinia, in some of these other areas that we find evidence, even in Israel. And I actually went to go see that, the Circle of the Rephaim, which is really fascinating. It's just, it's really something. They have a big open in the area in the middle. They have like a grave there, and I guess that's where they did their communicating with these entities. But I believe, yes, I believe that they were around, because you hear Indians speaking about them. You're actually Lewis and Clark, from what I understand, some of what they wrote, they were talking about running into remnants of them somewhere. And so, and of course, that disappeared too, or else one of them got killed. I remember that. They got assassinated. So it's interesting to see that a lot of this points to them. And where did all this knowledge, especially in South America, you get these walls that are so perfectly formed out of these stones. I mean, there's no tool, not even today, that they can figure out that they can make an easy way to make all these stones come together like that and form these walls, and etc. There's a lot of it there. So that's a lot of what I talk coming up, actually, in my third volume. I'm talking about a lot of how the giants did make it in so many areas in the world, and I believe that they were actually chased out. And that's why they were among the first of so many lands. And because they were being chased out by not only godly people, but pagans and people who didn't exactly believe in God, because they may have got a lot of information from them, but these giants became, a lot of them, bloodthirsty, and they weren't exactly good neighbors. They actually, took children, maybe killed people, ate people. We hear a lot about the cannibalism that's going on. So that is one reason why I believe that a lot of these giants were considered the first in the land, and they were then, people would come after them, human beings. They would start to barter for this knowledge that these giants had, and they had a great deal of this esoteric, supernatural knowledge. And I think that's why, again, another reason why things are trying to be hid so much is because they want to try to make it look like, oh, well, humans, maybe thought of this knowledge after a while, or, as you were saying earlier, Zen, aliens, and etc. They're probably trying to go that route nowadays, as you notice. They're going more and more towards something like, oh, well, aliens are the ones that actually come down and seeded, blah, blah, blah. Again, it's a cover-up. It's something to try to get rid of what could actually be supporting the Bible. And again, that's why a lot of these giant bones and etc. just seem to disappear, and they're taken away.
Yeah, now, as you said, there is this great push to bring forth the idea that the ancient aliens, the so-called flesh and blood extraterrestrials, are our creators, when that also is a lie.
Right. Now, not only the next coming months that I'm going to get into is more of the people that were actually around at the time of the fall. I'm going to show some of their equivalents to a lot of the different pagan gods and stories on how they actually shed light on the Bible and biblical stories, which we'll find later. But not only that, I'm finding that there are some other parallels that ancient pagan stories and mythology actually kind of shed light on some of the things that you and I have talked about Zen in the past. And I personally have a thought about the sea, and what I believe sometimes when we talk about the sea, because in the Chaldean account of the deluge, we have some quotes here. I have begotten man and let him not, like the sons of the fishes, fill the sea. And I believe that there is a concept, when maybe even the Bible talks about the sea, that it could actually mean the sea of the supernatural, the infinite space in between our natural world. As we talk about at the very end of Revelation, where God says there will be no more sea. And, at the beginning there was, obviously, because God created the sea. That's just a theory of mine, and because when we hear about pagan mythology, we hear about a lot of fish gods, the mitre, a lot of like Aphrodite coming out of the sea, and I believe a lot of that is symbolic, even in the Bible, of the supernatural, the supernatural sea. Because as Revelation states, if there's no more sea at the end times, at the end of the world, that doesn't mean I don't believe that there's going to be no more water in the world for anybody to drink. I just believe that the veil between the natural and our supernatural world will be gone, so we won't have to be not seeing any evidence of God around or angelic beings, etc. So that's my take on it. But it's interesting because we do see in ancient paganism a lot of talk of the sea and coming out as fishes, etc. And I'll get more into that later. But another thing we hear a lot about is, as far as paganism, we hear about chaos. And we hear about how, for the ancient historian Hesiod, for example, said that chaos was an unformed and confused bulk at one time in our early world. So it's interesting because if you think about it, that's exactly what the Bible says at the very beginning. That, there was God was hovering over the spirits of the waters, and everything was chaotic. It was, in order for him to kind of refashion the world and bring it back together, everything was in chaos at the time, which is interesting. And we even have ancient Greek and Roman mythology says that the universe actually sprang from chaos. So again, could all of these thoughts and concepts have come from the same origins, actually?
Well, they have the belief that order comes from chaos, so.
Yeah, the order, and then there we go, and we got the gap theory, we got the talk about the world actually being destroyed by God, and now everything was a watery chaos, and then now being refashioned again at the time to make a current world. We also have talk about, again, the pagan Hades, and we got the Jewish Sheol, and even hell, etc. We have those all concepts of the darkness or something underneath the earth, and then we talk about, what you talk about Zen quite a bit with the flat earth and etc. and having, an atmosphere or firmament above. You have the middle world where we're at now, and then you have something under the earth, which is actually, again, where it's just those three. And we do hear mythology actually talking about Poseidon, again, water god, maybe possibly coming from the sea of the supernatural again. But he has a trident, and from research I found that the trident is supposed to symbolize his rule over the upper earth, like the earth that we're on, the terrestrial earth, and the earth below. So he's supposed to rule all three of those platforms. You heard about that, Zen, with the trident?
Oh no, that's very interesting. But I take Poseidon to be the same as the Sumerian Enki, that he was over the Abzu, or the watery deep, and that Zeus is associated to his brother Enlil, who's called the Lord Command of the earth. And so we see that there's a false pantheon of gods and goddesses as well, and that you have to understand that in order to make sense of, the ancient pagan, the Gentile worship of this pantheon of gods and goddesses and who they are, because they have different names in every culture, but it's the same set of characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll let the cat out of the bag a little bit here, and I'll just kind of tell you my thought on what some of these characters are. And of course, the essence of paganism is all about, quite often, is ancestor worship. Okay, so who are the primordial ancestors that we have? We have obviously we have Cain, we have Abel, we have Adam, we have Eve, and of course we have the serpent as Cain's father, also throwing himself in there, especially when we talk about pagan religion. So I believe, as you were saying, with Enki and a lot of these different gods, it all comes down to the same, which again is the serpent himself. Just other languages, other nation states, etc., just using that same character as the serpent, but just having their different names. And I also believe that when Cain and the serpent established their pagan religion, they did keep Abel, they kept Adam, and they kept Eve in there as worshipful deities, okay? Because Cain obviously probably loved Eve, and he probably respected Adam and kept him on board as, another father deity, but he just got a little confused. He started following the ways of God, so he just wasn't quite there. So Adam needed the other God, the serpent, his father, to be the substitute father God. And now we'll get into this later on, but it just seems that there are two father gods in a lot of these pagan religions that we'll talk about, and I believe that that's because it is Adam and it is the serpent kind of having to step in and show Adam the pagan ways, the right way to go about it. And that's where you get, you do get Zeus, I believe, as an avatar for Adam, but you also need to have that serpent, or they do, to come in and to kind of just tell him the right way to go. The same with Abel. Abel is also, I believe, as Tammuz and some other gods in this pagan realm. Mars, we'll learn more about that coming up probably in the next month. But they had to have more of an evil twin brother to Cain, so Cain would be able to rectify a lot of the sins of the world, and that's basically what Abel's godhead was. So they could worship, they could have these other godheads like who are actually God followers, like Abel and Adam, but they just have to kind of twist them around and make them sound a little confused. So they have to have an enemy somewhere. Someone's got to battle someone, because that's basically how a lot of these stories are. They have to claim victory. They claim victory of all those God lovers, etc. So that's what I believe that was part of that, letting out of the box. And it's interesting because I did quite a bit of research in this first chapter just to show that a lot of these gods that we talk about are just they're obviously all the same 4 or 5 gods that we're talking about in the garden. It gets fascinating after a while, but I'll get into that next time. But as going back to where we were talking about the pagan Hades and the Jewish Sheol and etc. talking, and I have one of our quotes that I have from my book. It says, "It is especially important to note the close connection of the underworld with the sea, a perfectly understandable conjunction, for the dark, unseen recesses of the ocean bottom are likely apertures to Hades, if not the place itself." So we do talk about, and I have talked about in previous volumes, the darkness of the deep. You could call it Abraham's, bosom, back all the things that are that holding places for the souls that either need judgment or are going down. And it's interesting that we do have a pagan version of a lot of this stuff, which is Hades, etc. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's there's always this parallel account, but again, it just goes back to there being one family group. What the Isaiah speaks about uh, Lucifer being the abominable branch, and that his bloodline are the children of the the wicked one. They are the evildoers. The seed of the evildoers is what it says in Isaiah 14. And so again, if you have the knowledge that there are these two bloodlines, then everything makes sense. But if you don't, you you believe that we're all the same, we're not. There is a group that worships the devil, and they take blood oath to bring on the agenda of the New World Order. And they are doing that in order to bring forth the Antichrist. And, all of that is cited in Albert Pike's vision of, the reason they needed to foment 3 world wars as a pretext to start and establish a one world order. I mean, yes, it's about global domination, but it's about taking world control in order to hand it over to the Antichrist, which is exactly what was portrayed in the closing ceremonies of this year's Olympics.
Yeah. Yeah. They will be bold and bold, and they'll count on our stupidity and our ignorance of what we're seeing around us. And if we do start to see something or point something, they'll say, "Oh, you're just big, just mean. You're hateful. You're full of hate. You don't understand. It's art, all this stuff." But there's real directions. There's something going on. And once we find out how much that these when we do talk about paganism and God, and again, you could be pagan, whatever, people can do that. It's just, I'm not holding it against you, but it's just the concepts behind the paganism and what's being pushed is what I try to talk about. Because once you see that they have essentially the same thing as stories in the Christian in the Bible, then you start to see, okay, well, could they all come from one source again? Because we're starting to see more. And once we start to see that, okay, they could be the same stories, but one is just twisted and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors on the pagan end, because they don't want you to see what side they're really facing. And once we find that out, then we'll start to understand. And as you were saying earlier, Zen, it makes so much more sense. The world makes so much more sense once you start to see these things as they are. It's either one way or another. And one side, of course, their side is trying to absorb everything that we have. I mean, that was truly a sad day for them when Jesus rose from the dead and Christianity was born, is because they thought they had things all under wraps and all they had to do was keep up with the charades. But now a new huge movement was started, and then they've been trying to keep that under wraps for 2,000 years.
Have you come to torment us before the time? So they recognize Christ as the Son of God.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. They knew he was coming. So going back to what we were talking about, even more of these parallels in these on the pagan and mythological ends, we're seeing like in the bilingual of creation. That's another one of these ancient texts that were pagan, that were from the Mesopotamian region. It says, "The deep has not been made; all lands were seas." So, in other words, they do seem to have some kind of understanding that there was even a deep, even in the pagan side. We also have the goddess Ishtar, for example, considered the lady of the deep. So again, what are we talking about when we talk about deep? Do we just talk about something under the water, or do we talk about maybe she's the lady that comes, her goddess or her deity comes from something from the supernatural, from deep below, as far as even in what we're talking about below us, the darkness.
Yeah, the bottomless pit.
Yes.
The abysmal chasm.
Yes. So again, I believe that what I mentioned a little bit earlier, how is that things get twisted around, so now it's not God being the Savior, it's these esoteric references to the serpent of Genesis actually as being the chaos, and he's the one that actually stopped the chaos. So in other words, it's not that the garden allowed for sin and chaos and bad things to enter the world. It's more like with them, it's more like the opposite. It's like, okay, things are now getting better because the serpent enlightened mankind. He showed him to ways, as he was saying to Eve, he said, oh, you'll be a god, knowing good and evil if you'll just disobey God. And that's basically the two strains that we're facing now. We're facing where one is that after the fall, things are going to slowly degenerate, and the world itself is just not going to be the same as it was. It's going to keep going, getting more polluted, etc. And then we got the opposite, where the pagans, where the science says, oh no, we're actually doing better. We're going to reincarnate. We're actually going to evolve. We're evolving. Notice how science and paganism kind of follow along the same pathway. It says, no, we're by ourselves. We're just going to continue to get better. And it's quite the opposite.
Like the New Age, they think the Golden Age is coming, and that the gods are coming to save us.
Right. Yeah. So, more into this, etc. Okay. The next thing I want to get into a little bit is another thing, and it's almost what I've mentioned before, but ancestor worship is something, it's almost like a foundation of paganism. Okay, the first couple actually, according to Johnson again, that same author I was quoting, first couple advances to the forefront of gods. So in other words, we have to kind of look at what the serpent Adam needed to do. To establish their pagan religion, they couldn't just say that, I am a god right off the bat. They push things to allow others around them to kind of say that, our parents are so good, Adam and Eve, the first people, I know they're a little flawed, but they should deserve to be a deity. And that's why when you do read mythologies and stuff, you realize that these gods and goddesses weren't perfect. I mean, they did a lot of things. Some killed, some ate their own children, etc. We hear a lot of these things, and you wonder why. Okay, maybe they might have started off as humans at the time, or they just got elevated to the gods, kind of like in a reincarnated way, which is interesting to think about. I get into, when we're talking now, I'm going to start to talk a little bit about those 4 or 5 that I've been talking about, and I'm going to get into some of the different gods that I believe are avatars of Adam. First off, I want to get into Adam as the father, and I think we talked about some as an El, as an An, Anu, and Abu. Okay, and I think somebody defined the Anunnaki as what was the from heaven to earth came, or was it the sons of Anu, or the followers of Anu? Is that right?
Yeah, and Anak, the sons of Anak. Yeah, they're all tied to the fallen angels.
Yeah, but I believe that the Anunnaki, and actually it's a Sumerian term. If you think about it, Anunnaki, those from under Anu. Okay, those from under Anu, and I believe that when we talk about Anu or An as avatars for Adam, I think they directly reference again the Bible, where we talk about God coming down and bringing Adam's soul down to him and creating him directly. Okay, so pretty much I believe that this paganism actually takes that story and expands on it and talks about, okay, well, he came from the heavens because God came down and brought that soul down to Adam, so he must be the God of the heavens. He's a father God of the heavens. So we will see a lot of the heavens being talked about as far as these gods like Anu and An. And it does make sense. Some of these quotes that I have found, I have direct quotes from different volumes and such of research, and one, it says the names Anu or An can mean heaven or the heavenly one, and that's basically what I was talking about earlier.
So you think that Anu is Adam?
Yes, I do. I think he was a father god, and I think in a direct mockery or an imitation of that story of in Genesis 2, where God said to Adam, you are going to be created, I'm bringing the soul down to you from heaven and putting it into Adam. I believe that the pagans jumped on that and started saying, okay, well, Adam, again, remember how I was saying that they deified even Adam and Abel, and the reason I believe that they did that is because they people around them at the time wanted to just deify everybody because they were ancestors, so they didn't want to leave Adam totally out because he fell and he helped, quote, contribute to this new world by eating the apple, so they couldn't throw him under the bus totally. He was just a little, quote, confused.
I don't agree with that.
You don't agree?
No. I think that the Sumerians and the Anunnaki are connected to the fallen angels, and they were feathered serpents. They were here before modern humanity and before Adam and Eve. And there's two different people groups. The pre-Adamites, they were called the primitive workers, and then there was a new group that came up that was created by Elohim, and they're called civilized man. Have you read the Sumerian tales?
Which one?
All of them, all the writings.
I haven't read all.
Zechariah Sitchin, the Stairway to Heaven, the Last Book of Enki.
His quote, the one that I just told you, the one that the names Anu mean heaven. Sitchin was, there were gods upon the earth, gods, demigods, and human ancestry.
Yeah, they were demigods, but they weren't connected to Adam and the children of Adam. They're connected to the fallen angels.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying on that part too. What I'm just saying is they named Adam Anu. That's what I believe. I believe that because again, in the name Anunnaki, I believe that it was actually a name that described the fallen angels, which they were, but they were subject to him in the garden while they were in there. So that's
the story of Adam is he was called Adapa in the Sumerian tales.
I got that story too. Yeah, that's another name. Yeah, I get into that too a little later. But yeah, I totally agree with you on that too.
Anu, Enlil, and Enki, they were from the heavens. They were the fallen angels.
Right. I believe that Enki was another name for the serpent. I think I'll have to make sure.
Yeah.
But I will look as we go farther down. But yeah, I think that's exactly right. But yeah, I divided up into like the Akkadian names, the Sumerian names, and we'll get into them more. But yeah, I agree totally. What you're saying is that the Anunnaki were not descendants of Adam, but I think they were just given that title because before the fall in the garden, they were meant to serve under Adam as the helpers. That was part of their punishment because Adam was the viceroy. He ruled, but these terrestrial angels were around the garden probably. Remember that they were in existence. There was like 50 of them, and they did not want to not worship, but serve under Adam. When God said, "Okay, I'm creating this man Adam. He is going to be the viceroy of the garden," and I believe part of that fall of these Nephilim, these 50 or so angels, they're serpent angels. I believe that's part of what their fall was, according to those texts, because they did not want to follow under a man who was clay or who was from this fallen earth, from dust. They were higher beings, so I think that's why God demoted them to say, okay, no.
That was later. They fell on the second day, the first after the war in heaven, and this is in chapter 29 of the Book of the Secrets of Enoch. You'll see that it was on the second day that they were cast out, and then the firmament was put into place in order to keep them confined to this world, in this dimensionality. And it wasn't until the sixth day that Adam, was tempted, and he and Eve fell and were banished here to the earth. But the fallen angels were here from the second day to the sixth day, when there was not yet man. In the story of Jeremiah, that says that all the birds of the heaven fled, and the cities of the wilderness were destroyed, and there was not yet man. And it also talks about in Genesis 2 how there was a time when there was no rain, and the dew watered the land, and there was no man to till the soil. And that was a flashback to the first world age. 2 Peter, he speaks about how the first world age was destroyed by the Katabo, that it was annihilated. It was the world that then was. That was part of the era of the Anunnaki, the fallen angels. And that's why in the Sumerian kings list, they had reigns where they, ruled for 36,000 years.
Yeah, 1,000 years, yeah.
They lived much longer lifespans than we did. And it wasn't until, the time of Adam and Eve is the last 6,000 years. But there were literally, who knows, hundreds of thousands, very long periods of time. Because it even shows us here in the geology and the archaeological record that there are cities at the bottoms of the oceans. And those were created by the fallen angels at a time when the water levels were different, before the ice caps melted and flooded the world and elevated the oceans. And that was a very ancient time, way before Adam and Eve were here.
Yeah, we don't have to agree on everything. That's fine.
Of course,
I
yeah, of
enjoy
course.
listening to your thoughts, and I bounce back ideas off you, and also I enjoy it. So that's fine. We can.
Yeah, of
have
course,
thoughts.
of
I would
course.
like to learn from you about those things. So that's fine.
Well, I learned from you too, brother, so.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
One thought that I did hear, though, I don't know if you might have heard this before, but they did. I don't know what text it was. I think it was talking about. Actually, God had Adam sitting there on the ground, laying there, forming him without a soul yet, right off the bat. And that's, I don't know if it's from a Muslim source, because I like Tabari. I think that sounds more right. They could have done it from some kind of Islamic source. But
That's also in the Nag Hammadi codices.
Oh,
as
you
a-
did that?
Yeah, it's the same story is in the Nag Hammadi codices.
Okay. So could that have been where you're talking about, where maybe on the second day even, that Adam's body was laying there on the all full of dust and ready to get formed?
No, that was on the sixth day.
Okay.
Adam, his body, Adam was just like us. He pre-existed as part of the sons of God. All of the spirits of all of humanity, all the angels and all the creatures were created on the first day. We've pre-existed since that time. But Adam's body was created of the dust that was on the sixth day that he was merged with that what was a bright nature, but it was a dust form. And then he was placed into the garden to tend the gardens of paradise. And then the serpent, snuck in, or either possessed the serpent to sneak in. Satan, however he got in to paradise, he tricked Eve, and they fell, and they took on mortal form, and they were removed from the place of the immortals, because the place of the immortals, paradise, is above the vaulted dome of the earth. It's where New Jerusalem currently resides, and it will be at the end of days that, as John says in Revelation chapter 20, that New Jerusalem will descend out of the heavens, and that it will be here on the earth that Christ and God and the Holy Spirit reign with us. And so, that's will be for the millennial reign.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting what you say. Do you believe? I said I kind of believe what you're talking about, where you said that the serpent was in the garden, but I believe that Samael actually possessed the serpent, and I think that's in a few stories too.
Yeah, there's two different stories. Yeah, you have either he snuck in as a serpent himself, or a feathered serpent, or a basilisk, or a dragon, or that he possessed the body of some type of reptilian being. But either way, he got in there and tricked Eve, deceived her, and seduced her. And that's why it says in the Gospel of Philip that first adultery came into being and then murder, because Cain was a result of the adultery, and then
Right.
his killing Abel was the consequence of his birth.
Yeah, it's interesting that people don't catch that.
Yeah.
If you know the whole story, and if you want to learn the whole story, all of these obscure things that we're talking about make sense, and they all come together.
Oh, without a doubt.
One way or another.
Yeah, Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 that Eve was not a chaste virgin because she was physically corrupted, seduced by the serpent.
Wholly seduced, and that is in the Bible. That is not in one of these alternate texts where you could downplay it. That's in the Bible itself.
Right.
Right. And Adam was not in the transgression. So in other words, he didn't get in the fornication. He did, but he didn't do it in the way that the serpent seduced Eve. That's not good. The seduction is part of the fornication, which I believe. But, anyhow, another thing, a couple thoughts. I could just while we're on this subject, I'd be curious to find out your thoughts. And when we talk about the feathered serpent, in my view, I believe that the feathered part, when you hear in symbolic form, when they draw pictures inscribe images of the feathered serpent, I believe that it's a symbol of actually a serpent angel. In other words, one of the serpent angels.
Yeah, the seraphim. Yes.
And the feathers, I believe, means their swiftness from coming from the other side, from the supernatural. I believe that's when you talk about feathers. I believe that they either something from the sky, from up above, where it's supposed to be that spiritual place, the supernatural, or it's the swiftness of coming through the supernatural. Birds can fly, and you hear about beings, even Jesus coming out of a whirlwind. So when we talk about the wind and everything above us, I believe when we talk about feathers, as far as like the feathered serpent, that's what I believe. It's a supernatural being that's a serpentine angel actually coming out of the serpent, out of the supernatural. When you have the feathered serpents, are you close on that, or your thoughts?
Yeah, the seraphim angels. Word Sarah means serpent or reptilian. And so, it was the seraphim angels, and that's why it says that Cain had a seraphic appearance. He was reptilian in nature. That's why Christ calls them his bloodline a brood of vipers, a den of vipers.
Yeah. Because he was from the bloodline of the seraphim, the serpent that actually sired him.
Right.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yes. Jesus called it out for what it was.
Exactly.
And when you see these pictures of the devil and etc., which is kind of interesting because we were just talking about that tonight. You hear the devil with his pitchfork, and that goes back to what we were talking about with Poseidon and his trident. The pitchfork and the trident, pretty much kind of the same thing. And it's almost like it's like a symbol of what we hear about in mythology with Poseidon. And again, Poseidon comes from the sea, which I believe, again, that's my personal belief, comes from out of the supernatural. Again, he's a sea god, comes out of the supernatural. He's a father god, etc. And he has that trident, which is supposed to hold over the upper earth, this terrestrial earth, and the lower earth. There you go. And then you also have a few things like the tail. I always believe in my personal take on it. I might have mentioned it before, but when we talk about tails, I believe we're talking about something that's a little less than human, okay, in morality or whatever, considered less. And animals have tails, okay? And I believe when we talk about, when you see a symbol, a picture of this devil or whatever, he's red, he has a pitchfork, he has a tail, he's serpent-like in appearance. There you go, you're having all of these. He has two horns, and when we hear about two horns, I believe all this is like a conglomeration of a lot of symbolism and a lot of pagan references to actually the serpent, because we hear about two horns, and in the research, I found that when we talk about gods with one horn, we talk about they're more minor gods. In other words, they're like the sun. We have the son of somebody. Okay, when we have gods with two horns, they're more of the senior gods, like a father. Because we have, when I believe going back to the Tower of Babel, we have Cush as Nimrod's father, often symbolized as the two-horned god, and then we have Nimrod himself as the horn god, or one-horn god, and I believe he's considered a sun god. So again, it goes back, the two horns goes back to the serpent himself, again, because he's considered like a father god, and a very knowledgeable god, and etc. to the pagans.
Well, brother, we got just a short time remaining, so yeah, if you would give us like your closing thoughts, and again share where people can go to find your work and support you in your endeavors.
Okay, my brother, thank you very much. Yeah, we'll continue on with this next month.
Yeah, absolutely.
With you, Zen. Okay, so yeah, what I'm gonna just to give you a recap, we're gonna continue on a little bit more about my thoughts about paganism and some of these gods that we have out there and how they directly relate to these 4 or 5 characters of Genesis. I think it'll be exciting as we get rolling here. And then I'm going to get into that third book again next time. We'll probably do an hour on each, because we're talking about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and I'm going to get into the black horse, which I researched, I believe, might be a little bit more than just a reference to death and a quick chain of events. So that'll be next time. So my website is mysterybabylon.com. I'm going to be updating a little bit, but it has a lot of basic knowledge that I talk about, at least in the first couple books. So it's something if you want to check out. Send me an email. You can shoot me an email if you'd like. The email is mysterybabylon@1791.com, 1791.com. So just shoot me. I don't mind talking, questions, thoughts, whatever, critiques. Like I said, somebody mentioned in the chat earlier, iron sharpens iron, and I think that's a great quote. I always try to use that because I think it's very important. You know, Zen, I'm always here to listen to you, because of course you're not more than just a wealth of information. It's just things I can bounce stuff off of, and I can learn, and I can say, okay, that site or that text I never actually researched, but I want to go check it out because you gave me a good idea and a good thought. So, you know, we're always here, I believe, especially because we're such a minority, we're always here good to actually learn from each other and bounce things off each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't hesitate. So
that's how we learn. We're all learning from each other. Even, you know, the people that are in the chat, I've learned so much from all of them. So we're a family of seekers. We're learning together.
Yeah, and I really want to say that I appreciate you coming back, Zen, especially hosting the night tonight. It was very special to me because I feel good that we actually did like we do before, you know, and your voice seemed fine. I mean, you held your own, in my opinion. You did fine.
Thanks,
so
brother.
I'm so excited that you're back and you're doing the same work, God's work, that I believe that you were sent on earth for.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's good to be with everybody, and I just want to thank all those that are in the chat once more, and for you for your willingness to come on all these months and years now, brother. It's been a pleasure to host you.
Well, let's continue on more. Do you have any updates about yourself, Zen? About anything? How you feeling? Any new works in the progress, or any new thoughts about anything new?
Yeah, I'm. And I was talking about this early when we had trouble getting you back on, but I was telling everybody I'm working on a book of poetry called. It's going to be the Seekers of Lost Paradise, or Lost Paradise, but you know that's going to be the whole theme of it. So
it's going to revolve around the fall then, kind of poetry around the fall or after the fall.
Well, it covers all that, but it's just my awakening to a lot of things: biblical cosmology, pre-existence, the bloodlines, all these different things will be spoken about in poetic form instead of just, paragraphs of sentences. So creative
That's
writing.
very interesting.
Yeah.
I never knew you were a poet. It's really nice.
Yeah, I wrote 3 books of poetry long ago. But, when I started writing regular books, that kept me a lot busy, and so I cut back on doing the poetry, but I wanted to do that again. I wanted to be creative and be impactful with just a few words instead of many lines of sentences.
Interesting. One of my favorite books out of yours is The Lucifer, Father of Cain. That was one of the first ones I looked at, and that helped to launch me even more into research. So, is that, just while we're talking, is that something that one of the first books you wrote? I don't know, but I know it's been around for a long while. But is that an important book in your arsenal, in your opinion?
Yes, it was the 4th book that I had written, and it was the first book that was not poetry. So, yeah, it's very, very important to me.
Oh wow! I didn't know that. So you were mostly poetry before, and then
Right.
that book just wow.
Yeah, because I started seeing all these truths that nobody was talking about, and I was fascinated with the fallen angels and the giants in Genesis 6, and I wanted to know more, and so because there weren't a lot of books about it, I wrote one. But anyways, thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you all for coming. Right?
Thank you, brother. Be blessed. Good night, all.